Tonight, fighting for every inch of Bakhmut and the disagreement over who controls the symbolic city. Disputing a territorial ruin in Ukraine.
They destroyed everything. There are no buildings, just a lot of dead Russians.
As allies promise more help at the G7.
We have Ukraine's back, and I promise we're not going anywhere.
Bring that three!
Ontario's sports gambling standoff.
Absolutely, they created a monster.
The big bet to check celebrity influence in commercials. Plus, paddling towards the North American Indigenous Games.
So I have canoe building in my blood.
Crafting a boat built on Mi'kmaq history.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo. Reporting tonight, Heather Butts.
Good evening. The Prime Minister has returned to Ottawa after wrapping up crucial meetings in Japan. The war in Ukraine front and center on the final day as President Volodymyr Zelenskyy shored up support from all G7 leaders. Canada has promised to back his country for as long as it takes. CTV senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor starts us off.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy came to Hiroshima to rally support among countries growing weary of a war that shows no signs of ending. In their one-on-one meeting, Justin Trudeau highlighted Canada's financial and military aid and the long list of sanctions imposed on Russian officials, including 70 more added this week. But he made no new commitments.
And as I said to Volodymyr today, as I will continue to say, Canada will continue to do everything necessary to make sure that Ukraine has the tools necessary.
We have powerful relations with Canada.
Zelenskyy said the two countries have powerful relations and are working on something he can't yet discuss publicly. But Canada is supporting us, he said. Trudeau said he was optimistic the guest leaders of emerging economies, some not as hawkish on Ukraine, will join the G7's call for Russia to withdraw its troops.
It is Russia that can end this war tomorrow if they stop trying to invade a peaceful neighbor. It's that simple.
The Ukrainian president came to the G7 as a special guest, joining other leaders in the exclusive club of industrialized nations that included Russia's President Vladimir Putin until he was kicked out for annexing Crimea. Zelenskyy also spoke with the U.S. president, who was offering a $375 million package of artillery, anti-tank guns, and other equipment.
Together with the entire G7, we have Ukraine's back, and I promise we're not going anywhere.
Crucially, Joe Biden has approved a plan for Western allies to lend F-16 fighters to Ukraine, agreeing to waive export controls on the American-made jets. Though some fear equipping Ukraine with fighters from NATO countries could escalate the conflict further, Trudeau said Canada will be willing to help train pilots if required.
Trudeau said the site of this year's summit, next to where the atomic bomb exploded in 1945, directly above this spot, was an important reminder for the G7 as it confronts what he called Russia's reckless nuclear rhetoric. Heather.
Thanks, Glenn. Before leaving Japan, President Zelenskyy spoke out against Russia's claim it has captured Bakhmut, the eastern Ukrainian city that has become a flashpoint in the war. CTV's Jill Makashon on the situation of critical control.
From the ground, it's clear Bakhmut has no winners. After 9 months of constant war, the 400-year-old city has been reduced to rubble. Russia's defense ministry claiming victory, saying the private mercenary Wagner group, backed by Russian troops, has now seized Bakhmut. But on social media, video of Ukraine's ground forces commanders seen visiting frontline positions Sunday. Officials say troops are still on Bakhmut's flanks, still fighting. We're still in the same situation, said a military spokesperson. Leaving Bakhmut or defending it will be decided on whether there are enough resources to continue or not. A reminder to the world again, more help is needed. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, meeting with G7 leaders in Japan, said Ukrainian soldiers continue fighting for a city that, like the historic Hiroshima, was flattened by war.
Towns, just the same, nothing alive left. All of the buildings have been ruined.
The war's lengthiest battle has cost Ukraine, but it has also depleted Russian ammunition and resources. tens of thousands of lives have been lost in Bakhmut, including Andriy Sidorchenko, a drone operator who was killed in a Russian attack 2 weeks ago. The 35-year-old Ukrainian man sent his wife and teenage son to safety in Manitoba last year. His wife, Hannah, is in Ukraine this week. She plans to return his remains to the country he hoped to call home.
This was his will, this was his wish, his dream, and his family dream was always to come to Canada and to be here with the family.
A war that appears to have no end will soon have more ammunition as world leaders have agreed to continue supplying Ukraine's war chest on the cusp of a much-anticipated spring offensive. Heather.
Jill, thank you. The province of Alberta hit a dismal milestone today in its ongoing wildfire crisis, marking the 500th fire of the season. However, smoke, which has choked air quality across the province, is helping diffuse the sunlight and lessen fire activity, with only 5 new wildfire starts this weekend. But as CTV's Miriam Valdez-Carletti reports, some major fires northwest of Edmonton continue to burn out of control.
These are the conditions firefighters in northern Alberta are working in. Thick smoke blanketing the highway, making it hard to see and breathe.
Can you make your way up here when you can?
This video taken by a firefighter on the East Prairie Métis settlements shows how intense the situation is, with crews running away from flames. CTV News asked if extra support will be heading north.
There is an incident management team in command there, and we do have firefighters, helicopters, and heavy equipment all working on that fire.
3 hours south, the wildfires burning near Fox Creek and Little Smoky are listed as out of control and are a combined roughly 120,000 hectares in size. Alberta Wildfire says fire crews are working on creating a bulldozer guard to help protect the community. People from Fox Creek were evacuated 2 weeks ago and remain in Whitecourt.
The smoke has been quite bad in the area from that we've been in, so of course it's starting to affect everyone.
People are being told to follow evacuation orders. Fox Creek RCMP say charges are pending against a man who drove around a checkpoint, got stuck in mud, and needed to be rescued. He was surrounded by wildfire, so a forestry helicopter was called in to airlift the man to safety. Highway 43 from Fox Creek to Little Smoky reopened Sunday afternoon, 3 days after it was closed to traffic. And rain is expected in the forecast, which is good news to Fox Creek's mayor.
That will be great relief, I would imagine, for them, as it's not just a little bit of precipitation, but of course it hasn't started raining yet.
Miriam Valdez-Carletti, CTV News, Edmonton.
Former Governor General David Johnston is set to reveal this week whether he believes a public inquiry into foreign interference is necessary. Johnston was tasked with making that decision when the Prime Minister named him Special Rapporteur back in March. But opposition MPs have criticized and repeatedly questioned his appointment. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
Before Special Rapporteur David Johnston even releases his findings on Chinese interference, doubt being cast is putting the government on the defensive.
He has a fake job, and he's unable to do it impartially.
We stand by Mr. Johnston's record of non-partisan service to Canada.
The report could provide more details about the activities of China's diplomats. According to Global Affairs, there are 176 foreign representatives from China on Canadian soil. One diplomat, Zhao Wei, has already been expelled for targeting an MP, but intelligence experts say others have also crossed the line.
70% of the Chinese diplomats currently in place in Canada are doing spy activities.
International registries show the number of Chinese diplomats in Canada is on par with the 178 in the U.S. It's more than the 124 accredited in the UK, and nearly 3 times the diplomatic presence in Australia, which has 64.
You would expect Canada to be closer to Australia. Only one of them is, of course, close to the United States of America geographically.
China would regard us as an easy mark.
Charles Burton had 2 diplomatic postings in Beijing. He says Canada should reduce the number of foreign representatives it accredits from China or risk jeopardizing relationships with allies.
Because Canada is a member of the Five Eyes intelligence consortium, and because we share an awful lot of military cooperation with the United States, that Canada could be seen as a weak link in the alliance.
Limiting Chinese interference comes with the risk of retaliation. Canada has about 50 diplomats in China, and in the past, disputes with Beijing have resulted in trade sanctions and the jailing of innocent Canadians. Heather.
Judy Trin in Ottawa. The race to the White House is heating up as two more Republican candidates plan to step forward for the GOP presidential nomination in a bid against current frontrunner and former U.S. President Donald Trump. CTV's Richard Madden on the busy week ahead.
Today's kids are growing.
Republican Senator Tim Scott plans to officially announce his presidential bid Monday with a splashy campaign launch in his home state of South Carolina.
Can I get an amen?
The party's only black senator is campaigning on a message of unity and optimism. It's in stark contrast to frontrunner Donald Trump, but on key issues, there's not much separating them.
What are the differences in terms of policy positions that, for example, you may have with President Trump?
Probably not very many at all.
Scott joins a growing field of Republican presidential hopefuls, which will soon include Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He's set to announce later this week.
How are you doing?
DeSantis is seen as Trump's most formidable challenger, who's selling his record of electability versus Trump's record of losing. Telling donors over the weekend, you have basically three people at this point that are credible in this whole thing: Biden, Trump, and me. And I think of those three, two have a chance to get elected president: Biden and me.
It's easy to be a front runner. It's easy to go out and take positions that are really popular at the time. It's harder to dig in and really cut against the grain.
But DeSantis faces big challenges against Trump. He won the state boasting of his Trumpian credentials.
Build the wall.
And now, Team Trump is hitting back.
DeSantis is now attacking the very man who saved his career.
The governor's escalating legal fight with Disney cost his state thousands of jobs and the cancellation of a $1 billion expansion project. The Trump campaign says DeSantis was caught in the mousetrap and are running new attack ads and a new nickname.
We can't afford Ronda's sales tax.
Now DeSantis is expected to officially launch his campaign as early as Wednesday with an online video, followed by a big rally a week later. Heather.
Plenty to watch for this week. Richard, thanks. The popularity of sports betting ads featuring top athletes is facing growing criticism. As advertisers entice players to join the game, some worry the influence of star power is going too far. CTV's Adrian Gobriel explains.
Drain that three!
They're an advertiser's dream team, from the great one to the best in the world. Sports fans of all ages are becoming all too familiar with the new game they're being enticed to play: online betting. And now one of the most well-known hockey dads in the country says it's gone too far.
It is degrading the sport, and it is ruining the experience for families watching at home.
Carl Subban has joined a campaign to ban ads for gambling. He's not just the father of PK, Malcolm, and Jordan. He has perspective as a school principal.
We know what the science tells us, that the part of the brain that is responsible for decision making is not fully developed until you're about 25.
13 months ago, Ontario went all in, regulating the first internet gambling market in the country. Anyone of age can now place a bet on almost any aspect of a game or spin an online slot machine with the flick of a finger on their phone. However, the province's Alcohol and Gaming Commission is now proposing a ban on the use of athletes as well as celebrities that can reasonably be expected to appeal to children and youth from internet gambling advertising and marketing. The decision, which is still pending, could shape the gambling market across the country.
Do you believe that Ontario is setting the stage for a national gambling crisis?
Absolutely. They created a monster.
CTV News spoke with a recovering gambling addict who asked we protect his identity as he now leads Gamblers Anonymous meetings.
You've met children as young as 8 years old?
Yeah. The 8-year-old took his mommy's credit card without mom knowing out of the wallet and was betting on games and was betting on anything he could.
How much money did this 8-year-old spend, roughly?
$25,000.
Canadian gambling lobbyists have been adamant over the last year. They don't see the use of celebrities in commercials as harmful.
Advertising is a part of what comes with having a regulated gaming market. And over time, people will understand what the ads are.
There's something not right about it when I'm sitting down with my granddaughter, my grandsons, watching the hockey game, and then I see these ads.
Ontario's Alcohol and Gaming Commission have yet to release a date for their decision, and they tell us they won't be commenting until one has been made. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Vaughan, Ontario.
Coming up, a display of master craftsmanship.
It's 1,000 to 1,200 feet of spruce roots.
The traditional canoe connecting Indigenous communities. Plus, a military plane's major malfunction. Harrowing moments for a pilot in Spain after a terrifying crash involving an F-18 fighter jet. The plane apparently suffered a malfunction, bursting into flames during a training exercise. Look closely. You'll see the pilot ejected seconds before the jet came crashing down at a military base. Remarkably, the pilot survived and is recovering in hospital. A deadly stampede at a soccer stadium in El Salvador has officials searching for answers. Chaos erupted during last night's playoff match as fans tried to push their way through one of the gates that was allegedly closed. At least 12 people were killed, dozens of others were injured. An investigation is underway. A shootout at a car show in northern Mexico has left at least 10 people dead, 9 injured. Gunfire erupted during the final day of an off-road car rally. Reports say people with long guns began shooting at participants at a gas station. Police believe the roadside massacre was gang-related. Still ahead, crafted for competition and culture.
It's these kinds of experiences that really will have an impact on these kids.
The Canoe Relay celebrating young Indigenous athletes. Royal watchers bid farewell to Princess Anne as her visit to New Brunswick came to a close.
To know that you're going to be meeting royalty, but when you actually sit down with them and speak one-on-one, it's just a wonderful experience that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life.
Despite heavy rain and strong winds, dozens made their way to Sussex to support the Commander-in-Chief, and Canada's longest-serving military regiment mark its 175th anniversary. This was the final stop of her 3-day tour. The North American Indigenous Games start in less than 2 months, and in anticipation of the big event, a rare piece of Mi'kmaq culture is making its way across Nova Scotia. In tonight's Indigenous Circle, CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Creason Ashkate looks at the relay connecting more than a dozen Mi'kmaq communities.
Mi'kmaq carpenter Todd Labrador is giving his birch bark canoe a final inspection before it's used out on the water. Traditionally, the Mi'kmaq would use these canoes to traverse Mi'kma'ki, the land here that is now called Nova Scotia.
My great-grandfather built canoes on the Jeremy side and even on the Labrador side. So I have canoe building in my blood.
Call it a labor of love that goes back 8 generations. Todd says his daughter helped him build this 19-foot canoe by hand, using traditional materials like birch bark for the hull and cedar for the frame, all of it secured together with spruce root.
It's 1,000 to 1,200 feet of spruce roots, so I spend a lot of time digging roots and splitting.
The canoe will make 15 stops in Mi'kmaq communities leading up to the North American Indigenous Games in July, where more than 5,000 young competitors will gather in Nova Scotia.
NAG is really about sport and culture together and celebrating them as one. So part of the canoe is a connection between sport and culture.
Here, a water ceremony is done before the canoe is put out on the river.
It's these kinds of experiences that really will have an impact on these kids and show them firsthand what working together is, what moving together as a community and being part of a nation is all about.
Another example of Indigenous culture and youth involvement both so critical to the games. Krisnachkate, CTV News, Halifax.
After the break, a rewarding journey.
It's a tough road, but you go on.
A relentless mission motivating others to reach their full potential. We leave you tonight with a remarkable senior showing resilience in the face of adversity. Les Chan made a conscious choice to channel positivity to help tackle tough situations while inspiring others. Here's CTV's Adam Sawatsky.
Les Chan is creating needlework he hopes will leave people in stitches.
The power of humor. Everybody can have fun.
While his original teacup patterns are punny,
Shake your booty, TNT. A cup, B cup, teacup.
the prospect of sewing them with one hand would have seemed impossible after the seizure that hospitalized Les at 13.
At the time, the doctors told my family I would not see 14.
It was a brain tumor that left Les with limited function on the left side of his body.
All the kids going to school, teasing me.
Despite being battered with both racial slurs and derogatory comments about his disability, the bullies couldn't break Les's strength of spirit.
It's a tough road, but you go on.
Les resolved to be self-reliant, teaching himself everything from how to knot a tie with one hand to strapping a watch on his wrist by himself.
It's really starting to be a real partnership.
And there are a couple of the countless skills Les felt compelled to start sharing after meeting others facing similar challenges.
I think a lot of people just give up, like, look, I'm screwed, you know.
So, Les started volunteering his time to teach others how to live life with disabilities differently.
The food thing is a big deal in my life.
Les says people with dexterity issues can struggle to make healthy meals. So, he wrote a humorous cookbook called Don't Stir Fry in the Nude, and regularly offers free classes on how to be creative in the kitchen. And after dedicating decades to serving on local and national boards, volunteering with countless community groups, the 67-year-old says he's learned that every obstacle we face is an opportunity to make a choice.
I'm trying to figure out what it says.
Opportunity is nowhere.
Yes. If you reread it, it's
opportunity is now here.
Yeah.
And Les says he chooses, instead of being a timid kitty, to live as boldly as a T-Rex, and not just reap the joy he sows, but share it.
I'm not content to do nothing. I want to create a better world for everybody.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Victoria.
An inspiration for us all. That's our show for this Sunday evening. I'm Heather Butts. For Sandy and all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.